This week, we fix the DCEU and try not to hate on Suicide Squad too much. Look, in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. No, it's the casual cinema. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the second episode of the Casual Cinema. I'm one of your hosts, Josh, joined as always by Nathan. Say hi, Nathan.
Hi, Nathan.
Fantastic. This week we are talking about how we would fix the DCEU or DC Cinematic Universe. Now, some of you might be wondering, why the hell are we talking about this week? Well, we are talking about it because the early reactions to Shazam are actually quite good, which made us think about how the initial start to the DCEU was kind of mixed in terms of quality. So we thought by kind of providing you guys with our versions of the DCEU. And what that means is we're going to tell you what movies we think would stay, what movies we think would go, and then kind of give you an overall look at our versions of Phase 1. Now, in terms of Phase 1, we're talking about like Man of Steel to Suicide Squad. So the four movies that are kind of in there. Actually, no, it's not Suicide Squad. What is it? It's Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman. And then what we think the Justice League would be following our versions of Phase 1. So with that all in mind, we'd like to start with Nathan by talking about what he thinks should stay in terms of which movies should stay in the DCEU. So which ones should stay? I keep saying stay a lot. I don't know why. Just go.
Hey, it's me. Staying here. Oh geez, we'll put him on the spot here. Alright, what I think should stay here in the DCEU. I think Man of Steel can stick around. Sure, why not? Right? But I think it should have a bit of a lighter tone, be a bit more cheesy and fun. Maybe not on the same level as Shazam, but I think it needs a bit more charm than what we got. The general plot's fine. You can keep all the stuff with Zod. I mean, that's pretty good, right? I like the end when he has to break his neck. That was pretty full on, right? It's a good scene.
Yeah,
I like that.
It's good. Yeah.
I said it needs to be lighter tone, but I still want that scene in it.
So it's like, I want. I want it to be lighter, but keep the death scene in it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you got to balance it, you know. I mean,
yeah, true.
It's a bit too dark for me. I mean, that's how I feel about the whole DCEU, and I think a lot of people do. It's missing that comic book charm, I suppose.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and I think apart from that, I'd probably only really keep Wonder Woman then as well, which can basically stay the same. I mean, I had some good jokes in there and stuff, so that one was kind of more fun. I think it started to get a bit more lighter. Yep. But maybe the big CGI fight scene at the end, I wasn't a huge fan of that, so I don't know. I might ditch that or replace it with something else if I could.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things though, right? Like, how do you change it then? Because you still want to have Ares, I would argue, but then you don't want to, like, I guess, lose the whole grandeur of a third act. I don't know. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I don't know. I'm not sure what I'll do. Maybe if they just had better special effects like Marvel, then.
Yeah, that might be a way to fix it. Anyway. In terms of so that's it. Sorry, that's just it. That's it. Nothing else would stay. Just those two.
Like before Justice League.
Yeah, before Justice League. Yeah.
Well, that only leaves Suicide Squad and Batman vs Superman, right?
Yeah. So I'm just asking you, like, do you think they should stay?
I think if I wouldn't keep. It's tough because I do like Suicide Squad, but if I was to keep that one in, I think it definitely needs to change a lot. I think it should have been a lot more like what's the anime one? Assault on Arkham. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it should be a lot more like that one, especially how the characters are, how they're portrayed is a lot better than that, especially Captain Boomerang, because he was really disappointing. I was looking forward to that. As an Australian, I was looking forward to Captain Boomerang. Was very disappointed by that.
Well, the focus of the movie kind of ends up being Deadshot and Harley Quinn, doesn't it? And
they're always the main characters, and the main characters in Assault on Arkham too. There's some really good scenes with them, and it's just works so much better. I don't know. Could be
Yeah.
casting, could be script, whatever. But it
From what I
just
remember, there
doesn't
was like a
work.
kind of romance that they almost had, some sort of thing, or like it wasn't a full-on romance, but it was like obviously sexual tension between the two of them.
Yeah, they hook up. They have a little fling, one night stand kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think if that was in the actual movie that we did get, I think it would have at least added a different kind of dynamic to when the Joker showed up. But anyway, that's like discussion about Suicide Squad in general. But like, if that's not something you're necessarily going to keep, then and Batman v Superman isn't like per se.
I think if it can't be done right, then leave it out. But because it's a villain film, and it's so separate from the other movies, like it doesn't feel like it's part of the phase. You know what I mean? It's kind of just like a standalone film, just like on the side. Doesn't really
Yeah,
doesn't really add to anything. So for me, like I don't know. I guess I'm avoiding villain films and just kind of
yeah, but I agree with you. Like it's unique, right? And it is about a group of villains, and it would be something different. But it's just a matter of, in terms of setting up for a first Justice League movie,
yeah.
would
If there
it do the
was
job?
Yeah, if I could find a way to connect them more to the hero movies, then probably do it like that, and like make them like a bigger third even, or like how they could pop up again, because it's just
Yeah, I mean, it
yeah.
definitely could do it, but yeah. Anyway,
And Batman vs Superman, maybe I'd save for later, because
yeah,
I
like
I think there should be a relationship between Batman and Superman first before they fight. Like
before it's just, hey, I just met you, let's fight kind of
also
situation.
like what they do in the animated movies, there's like years later after they've been friends for years, and then they fight afterwards when they're like old. That's
Yeah, I agree.
yeah.
I completely agree. And yeah, I'm pretty much the same on what I think should stay as well. I think Man of Steel and Wonder Woman. Um, I completely agree with you with Man of Steel. I think that the tone of the movie kind of needs to change. I think that the story, in terms of everything with Krypton, is completely fine. I like that stuff. I just feel like that, he should be a lighter character. In the movie is really grey, and it kind of just comes very grim and so much destruction. And I know that's been talked about so much, but as a whole, the movie just kind of is supposed to be about the superhero of all superheroes, and you
Yeah,
kind of just end
because
up with a film which is a really
yeah, just to touch on what I said, no, because I said lighter tone and like more cheesy and fun, but maybe focusing that on the actual character, not the movie as a whole, probably would help as well. Because I didn't. Yeah, I get what you're saying. The
yeah,
character
like
himself needs to be more lighthearted, not necessarily the film like as well.
yeah, and again, mine was also Wonder Woman. That was the other movie I wanted to stay, and I would agree with you to a certain extent with the third act. I do think it gets a bit kind of out of hand, but I could forgive that stuff. For me, it's a matter of like, you know, given the fact that we're doing potentially our own versions of these movies. Some of the Bruce Wayne stuff, kind of him sending her the picture of like her and the military unit that all the World War II guys that she ran around with, that sort of stuff, which is a bit like why. That sort of stuff I found was a bit kind of extraneous, not necessarily needed as well. But yeah, I think other than that, I completely agree with you. In terms of what we'd go, we say what would go. We said Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad, or at least until later, as you said. So I guess now's the meat of this whole conversation, which is getting into our phase ones. Now, I don't think you have a particular order of your movies.
I
I mean,
I have like a rough layout, but I'm not sure.
yeah, well, why don't you start by giving us at least the first. Give us your movies, because both of us had to pick four movies, because as we said initially at the intro, the DCEU, at least in its first phase, consisted of four movies and then the Justice League. I guess you can count the Justice League as a phase one movie, which means it's five, but we're going to look at four anyway. So, what are the four movies that you picked and why?
All right, so let's still start off with Man of Steel, because he's the big hero, the main one, I guess. So just keep him in there to start. Why not?
Yeah.
It works as an intro to the phase, and then I would go to Wonder Woman. I mean, no particular reason. Maybe just because also it's already an existing movie, so it's like just chuck that in there. And then I would have a Flash movie because I really like the Flash, and I think he's a great character and he deserves a film. And I think there's
Yeah.
a lot of interesting things you could do in a Flash film that we haven't seen. There's lots of villains you could use. Like I don't know, I feel like there's like a lot of freedom there, and it's not too like extreme to have at the start. You can keep it like down to earth. And then I will do something a little bit interesting. I was thinking, well, Martian Manhunter, right, is kind of like a big part of Justice League, and we haven't seen much of him yet. And yep, sorry, I lost my train of thought. All right, hang on.
No, that's alright. Don't stress. Like I completely agree with you about so far. Like I actually was really surprised you put Martian Manhunter in there. Like I had considered him, but hadn't really thought about a movie that would be entirely
I
based around him.
I don't know if it was from the animated show, like for Justice League, but there's like I saw something and some animated thing, and it was like Martian Manhunter is like disguised as a human on Earth, and Batman like realizes there's something funny about this guy, and he's like trying to like find out what's like weird about him. I think it was Batman. I feel like I don't know if I just made this up or this is an actual thing. I don't know.
No,
But
I think there is. I think there is a movie. I can't remember the title. It was one of the first DC animated films,
Yeah, that's
and it was
right.
a
But
Justice League film movie.
I think
Yeah.
that would make a really cool live action film. Like you could have like it's like a Martian Manhunter film. You can have all his backstory and stuff and find out about him, and you can kind of introduce Batman in the background, kind of like hunting him from the like shadows and like trying to chase him, and he's trying to like evade him. I guess I don't know, something different.
Well, it would be interesting, I guess. It depends on where you would put Batman in it. Like, would he be like a villain, or would he be like another sort of like it's kind of like a just you get both of them, like a 50-50 ones that both of them are heroes, but you're just seeing both of their sides of the story. Like, how would you see
Yeah, I
it?
can't remember the anime one. Martian Manhunter. He was like a detective, wasn't he? Or like a reporter or something.
Yeah, he was a detective. He was a
Yeah,
private eye, I think. Private eye, yeah.
maybe I'd almost keep it exactly the same, but I think maybe focus maybe more on Martian Manhunter. I think
Yeah, well, that's
kind of
fair
like
enough. I mean,
trying
it
to
is
find,
different.
trying to like work out the Earth and like fit in and stuff. All that fun stuff. And then
Yeah,
that way it can, they can become friends then and there, and then when you go into Justice League, then they can like form it together, I suppose, and like start recruiting everybody for like I don't know a big threat that's coming, which I also haven't thought about. But
yeah. Well, give it some thought. Give it some thought because what we're gonna do is I've got mine, and if there's anything you want to chime in on or talk about, or if you want to expand upon something, by all means, just jump straight in. But I was the same. Now I've kind of given an order to mine, but I'm still unsure. Again, I think I want to start off with Man of Steel as well, with the same changes that we talked about. I think, as you said, it's a great intro because you're kind of introducing people to the world of this whole DC universe in general. So I think that works. And one of the elements that I actually did like from Batman v Superman was that whole idea of people reacting to Superman and him coming to Earth, and the idea that they're seeing this alien for the first time, or these aliens for the first time. And instead of it being so negative, because it feels like Batman v Superman was focusing so much on the negative and how to like counter this supposed threat, I kind of thought, well, why not the next movie be something like, and this might be a bit weird, but Teen Titans. And the reason why is because I feel like if I did a Justice League movie later on, I would want Cyborg in it still. And the way that I would do it was I would almost have Man of Steel set in the early 2000s and then have Teen Titans like right after it. So you have these teens, hence the title, and they're reacting to this. It's not necessarily directly related to Man of Steel, but it would just be any kind of Teen Titans story where Deathstroke or Slade, as he's also known, would be fighting them. But you'd be able to introduce Deathstroke and have the Teen Titans, and you'd be able to have Robin who could reference Batman, but Batman wouldn't directly be in the movie. Anyway, after that, I would have Wonder Woman, pretty much, as you said it, pretty much stay the same. And then before a Justice League movie, I would have a Flash movie as well. That was the other movie. Now, I was tossing up a Suicide Squad movie like Assault on Arkham, but I thought about a Flash movie where you had another Flash, like perhaps Jay Garrick, the original Flash, come and I guess you could say come to Barry from the future perhaps and has to take him to the future, and it's like post whatever the Justice League movie would be, or post some catastrophe and everything's gone wrong. And then it sets up a potential Justice League movie by having at the end of it, the Flash have to then travel back in time to counter what will eventually happen in the Justice League by forming all these people together and getting them all together.
I mean,
And I thought
you
that was an interesting
you
idea.
really thought this out a lot more than I did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I kind of thought
Okay.
about it. I thought about it, and I was like, oh, that would be kind of cool
I
to have
composed
that.
this last minute on the spot, but yeah, no, that's really cool. I like that. That's well, we both had the idea of a Flash film, which is kind of interesting. So
Yeah, well, I was tossing up between that and the Suicide Squad because again, I was thinking, do I want it to end up being some big intergalactic calamity that brought everybody together like the Avengers, or did I want it to be a bit more grounded and be a bit more like it's a group of supervillains rather than just a big faceless bad guy? Because I feel like we see so many of them, and for DC to kind of differentiate from Marvel, I think having that would have been different, but I kind of just stuck to, well, that doesn't necessarily mean that, this version of the Justice League would have that, but I liked the idea of the Flash having to travel forward in time to save someone or have to respond to something and then come back and then try to form the Justice League in response to that big, world ending event. But yeah, I think we should get into like, besides that sort of stuff. Because you brought up Martian Manhunter, which I thought was really interesting. Um, I'm trying to remember you said you had a Flash movie in mind.
well, the Flash movie was. I think it would still work like before, and then you could have that bit like how if it was like similar to your one, which I kind of like. So I might just totally steal that because that's
No,
great.
that's okay. Go ahead.
And then in the Batman and Martian Manhunter one, at the end, like the post-credit scene or whatever, you could have the Flash then go to Batman and Martian Manhunter or whatever and be like, "Hey, I need your help or whatever." Because if like I don't know, it's like you're Jay Garrick saying because you're saying that Flash like brings everyone together, right?
Yeah,
If
like he sees something that happens. Yeah.
yeah, does like Jay Garrick put that idea in his head, like shows them who like someone is, like
Well,
Batman or
it could
something.
almost be like, I mean, I haven't seen the CW shows, but I know that sometimes people like take the form of other people. So who knows, man? Like it could be the end of the movie that it's like the reveal isn't that it's Jay Garrick, it's like the reverse Flash or something like that, and he's
Yeah.
done it to
Oh,
mess with Barry or something like that. And then, it's all this bigger plan in mind. I don't know. I liked the idea that of time travel, and I thought if you have a Flash movie, it would be, in my mind at least, silly to at least have at least not have either time travel or other speedsters in the movie. Like, you have to have that, I feel, because it's the Flash, and if you're not doing time travel or, having other speedsters, then you're kind of just stuck with Captain Cold, and as much as I don't mind Captain Cold, I think that it kind of just wears a bit thin.
no, yeah, it's good.
No, but anyway, what else do we talk about? Marshman, that's how you talk about the detective story now. Would it all be kind of set in modern era, would you think? Or.
I honestly didn't think about it too much. um,
I know.
yeah,
I know it kind of
okay.
seems like I've thought a bit more about it, but,
Hmm. Maybe not. Maybe we should just take it like all back to like I don't know, early on, like 60s or something. That'd be kind of fun, right? Kind of like I
yeah,
mean,
well,
yeah, like because that really, yeah, it's interesting because obviously Wonder Woman is already in the past as well, and then Flash would be in the future, I guess. Well, present day. Yeah, maybe like the Martian Manhunter one could be like a 60s kind of thing. That might be cool. I don't know.
well, it would definitely make things different, and I think
Yeah.
that having, as you said, even mentioning it, the idea of having, like, different timelines that these characters are from
Yeah.
would be interesting. Because the whole DC universe is built on multiverses and whatnot, and I feel like Marvel does have that, but what we've seen from Marvel has often been just the same sort of time period. We do get our first Avenger, Captain America First Avenger, we do get our Captain Marvel, and we might get Guardians being said, with flashbacks and whatnot, and we see different time periods. But having a movie that's actually set completely in a time period and like having these characters cross over from that time period would be different
Well,
and
it's tough
unique.
because it's like time travel is always like a risky thing to do in films. It gets confusing so quickly, and you gotta somehow keep everybody like on the same train of thought and knowing what's going on because the more timelines and versions of characters you introduce, the more confusing it gets.
I think it's one of those matters where, as you said, the more that you throw at the audience, the more confused they're going to be. But if you just simplify it and don't care so much about how they time travel and what means they use of doing it, and you just go with the idea of, okay, they time traveled, that's it, then you don't end up really caring about the other stuff. Um, I feel like, it's obvious reference to just say, like with Back to the Future, you don't care about how they necessarily time travel. It's just they time traveled.
Well,
And
we all know how they time travel. They have the flux capacitor, right? There's actually a very good backstory. He hits his head on the sink. Alright, come on. What are you
no,
talking about?
yes, but it's not like we know the inner workings of the flux capacitor. I just mean that explaining how the Flash, for example, travels through time, as we know, is the fact that he runs so fast that he enters, what is it, Speed Force,
Yeah.
which isn't really explained. It isn't even explained in the first place. It's just a space between time, I guess you could call it, where he then is able to, time travel. So I feel like spending less time on how he did it and more time on just doing the time travel probably wouldn't be such a big deal for
Well, no, I
people.
just meant more like if you're gonna have all these like alternate timelines and they're gonna be overlapping, then you got to be careful because it's got to keep track of it all.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, definitely, I wouldn't be so quick as to make like a Flashpoint paradox movie
Yeah,
where
exactly.
you have the Flash have to travel forward and see a parallel universe and stuff like that and then fix everything. Like, I just feel like that would be too much to do at once. But to have something similar to that that isn't too heavy would be fine, I think. Yeah, but besides that, I mean, obviously, we kind of alluded to the characters we would have in our potential Justice League movies. Um, I would imagine that you'd probably have the big three, um, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. Um,
Well,
but besides them,
and I guess Flash and Martian Manhunter. I guess because they're there, right?
yeah. So is it just them, or is it anybody else that
Um,
you'd like to introduce in that movie?
I don't know. I yeah. I don't know. Do you think that's a good Justice League movie? Does it sound right?
Yeah, I mean it's fine. I haven't got an issue with that.
It's
Sounds
kind
good.
of
I
the
mean,
same of what they've got now. It's just Martian Manhunter instead of Cyborg, which I don't know, something different. It's
yeah.
fine.
The thing that I would, the thing that is similar to both of our pitches is the fact that Aquaman is not present in either of them.
Well,
Now,
okay, because to me he's not a main character of Justice League. I really like Aquaman, and actually, for the movies I will do after Justice League, I would put Aquaman first.
yeah,
So I would
I
bring him
agree.
in after, or or he could be introduced in the Justice League movie. He can like come and help or whatever, and then he gets his movie later, kind of like what they did already in the
But
actual.
what about say Green Lantern? Where would he fit
Yes, Green
in or
Lantern
something?
comes after Aquaman. I was going to
Okay.
introduce him later. I don't know. I guess because there's already a lot going on in this one, then maybe like a bigger like outer space threat related to Green Lantern or whatever could come into like the next Justice League, like Justice League 2. I feel like, you know what I mean? It's like Green
Yeah.
Lantern gets introduced in Phase 2, and then like the next like big group movie is when he's part of the Justice League in that one. That's what I was
Yeah. Well,
thinking.
it's definitely an idea. It definitely
Yeah.
works.
I want to save him.
Um.
I want to save him for later because obviously it's risky bringing Green Lantern back too because the first one didn't go too well. So you gotta so save him for later. I think once everyone has a bit of faith. Like who knows? They probably still are bringing Green Lantern back. Like we don't know. So
Yeah. Well, it's been one of those things that's been on the shelf for so long. I mean, personally, if I did my Justice League movie or if my Justice League movie would be made, which it wouldn't, um, I feel like I would have introduced Green Lantern in my movie. Um, Especially if there was some sort of intergalactic threat that was introduced. I thought that it kind of would work if Hal Jordan or John Stewart, either one of the Green Lanterns, were kind of introduced in that film. I feel like it probably would make a lot of sense since I could almost see the Green Lantern as the Hulk equivalent, um, especially after his first movie, kind of being one of those characters that he might work in a group ensemble movie rather than an individual or solo film. That isn't to say that Green Lantern wouldn't work in a solo film, because he definitely would. There are so many DC animated movies out there that do so much justice to the character. It's just a matter of if if I'm speaking from a studio executive point of view, which I'm not a studio executive or a producer for that matter, um, I'd probably be thinking, oh, the Green Lantern movie didn't do too well, but he's such an intrinsic part of the Justice League, we have to have him in there. So why don't we put him in here in a role where he's only kind of part of the Justice League movies, at least for now?
Well,
Um,
yeah. Well, mm, yeah. I guess. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. You want to slowly introduce him.
yeah, and I'm the same on Aquaman. I mean, I've seen Aquaman the movie and I enjoyed it. I thought it was visually spectacular. But personally, I wasn't a big fan of the story, and I found it to be kind of a little bit goofy, and not even goofy to the point of like Thor Ragnarok, but like goofy to the point where it was just really cringy.
Yeah. Well,
and
I didn't see it. So.
yeah, don't get me started on the Africa cover. I'm gonna shoot myself if I think about that. Um, but I just feel like, as much as I'd like to see Aquaman, I probably would be able to wait a little bit longer for that. And I'd much rather see Green Lantern and the
Mm.
Flash. Definitely, I'd be more interested to see what the Flash would get with his own movie, just if it had that time travel aspect in it. Um, because that probably would interest me a little bit more than Aquaman in general.
Well, it's all been done in the CW TV show, so there's no reason why they can't, learn from that and make
Yeah,
a really good movie.
that's true. But what did you think of the inclusion of Teen Titans that I kind of threw in? Because we didn't really think about the Teen
That's
Titans. We didn't talk
interesting.
about the
So,
Teen
where do
Titans.
they play a part later on? Like in Justice League, are they in it, or what are they?
Well,
Or is only Cyborg in it?
I thought you might be able to have like Robin be a cameo in Justice League. But the way that I thought of the Teen Titans was just the fact that as a group of characters, you've got these kids, and I felt like it would be so different to what even Marvel has done. Like the X-Men's probably the closest thing in terms of how young they are.
You know
But I
what?
feel like
That it
it'd
just
be
sounds like
wacky enough.
it just sounds like a better replacement of Suicide Squad in Phase One. Like if they just did
That's
that
why.
instead, yeah, it just sounds like a funner version of that, I suppose.
Well, that's why I had Suicide Squad in my phase one, but I was like, I don't want to have two team kind of movies, and I thought if I'm gonna have one, why not have one that's different enough to the point where I'm like, the mere fact that you could have a live action movie where the Teen Titans exist in a building that's a big giant T, like it would just be, you know, fun enough where I feel like people would like it more. But yeah, I included it because I wanted something, as I said, that was fun, grounded, a kind of a response to Man of Steel. That you kind of had this big bombastic movie, and now you're having something that's a bit more on the fun kind of kiddie side. And I thought that, I mean, I really want to see Deathstroke, and being able to see that character, that villain, and kind of setting up that villain for a potential future that he could have in another movie, would be awesome. But yeah, it definitely would be a segue for Cyborg, because some of the characters in Justice League are so in the Justice League we did get were so underdeveloped that I was just like, oh man, thinking about it, I was just like, it would have been so much better to have gotten just movies that were more accurate to these characters, and having the Teen Titans for Cyborg would have been a lot more fun. But
Mm.
anyway, that's just my thinking.
My new pitch for my Phase Two movie:
Okay, here we go.
Batman and Green Arrow movie. There we go.
Is
That's
that just because you want to see Green Arrow a lot, or is
I
it?
love Green Arrow. It's one of my favorites. Yeah, but have you seen Batman: Brave and the Bold?
I've seen like, I mean, I used to watch it on Saturday mornings, but
I
I saw like a
watched
few
the entire
episodes.
series. Anyways,
Yeah,
it's pretty funny. It's a kid show, but it's funny. And Batman and Green Arrow have like this like cool rivalry going on, and they're like, like trying to best each other. Like the classic, who can take down more bad guys or whatever. And that's pretty funny. I like that. But I would like to see Green Arrow in the live action movies. I wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't give him a movie, but
well, why not?
because yeah, I guess you could instead of a Batman movie, since it would be basically the same thing.
I mean, I guess so, but I think it's a different enough story. I mean, you got the whole island situation going on, where he's stranded on the island, and
Yeah,
no, I think
you're right. Yeah, well, I don't know. I guess I'm just kind of reluctant because I feel like people don't like him as much as I do. I don't know. I'm not sure, but I would watch a Green Arrow movie. I think it'd be great.
Well, I'd watch anything that's really superhero related to begin with, but
Well,
I feel like
I would be pretty excited for a Green Arrow movie.
well, it could almost be. I mean, I'm not saying it's exactly the same, not by long shot, but so many people compare Doctor Strange and Tony Stark in terms of who they are, right? And I feel like the comparison between Oliver Queen and Bruce Wayne could be arguably the exact same. They are the same person almost, yet their stories are different. Um, so there's nothing wrong with having a movie that is similar to Batman.
That's also well, I think so the problem is what Arrow did was it made Green Arrow a very serious character, and I think that's what made him so much like Batman. And that's like the most recent version everyone's seen of him in the first live action version. So I think that's why everyone's like, oh, he's just Batman. But the animated one and the comic one, he's really like light character, is really funny, yeah. And I think if they did that movie, then there's something unique there because it's almost just like a funny Batman, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely got a point.
And maybe that's why like a movie like a buddy cop movie with them two would be kind of funny because Batman's like really serious and Green Arrow's always cracking jokes. Actually, that reminded me of something. I also wouldn't mind a Batman and Robin movie, a new one. I think that would be something different as well. Interesting.
Well, it would work in my universe because I got the Teen Titans.
Yeah, exactly. I think a Batman and Robin movie is just like a really fun idea, like something to bring back, like something from like the classic, TV show and what they tried in the movie that didn't really work. But if you modernize it, I think there's something there for sure.
It's just one of those things. Like, I'm excited. I would be excited about that too, no matter what. I think that the problem I think most studios probably see with that is that idea of, if we're modernizing it, how do we avoid what Joel Schumacher did with Batman and Robin, and how do we not make it, Arnold Schwarzenegger spouting one-liners every 2 seconds?
But that's the thing, we're not studio executives, and that's why we can just say whatever. Because,
it is true.
But I honestly think, because we're fans, and like we're saying we want to see that, so I'm sure other fans want to see that. I feel like the companies are too scared to take the risk, but there's no reward without a risk, right? And I feel like you do a Batman and Robin movie, you got something.
Yeah, I completely agree. And
it's been a long time, and I think it's something. I don't know.
Look, it's a good idea.
Just keep saying the same thing, but I see potential there for sure.
I know, but
I don't know how to elaborate on it because I don't know what I will do with it.
Yeah, I know. I'll do a Batman and Robin movie. There's just no context.
There's some untapped potential there. I know it.
Look, I mean, no matter what, you slap anything with Batman on it, and people would show up. And I feel like if you made it in the vein of Adam West Batman, then it would be so much fun to watch anyway. I mean, especially now, I think lighthearted superheroes are definitely something that's in. So I don't see why it wouldn't work.
Yeah, I like Batman being a serious character, but I think they could, for the sake of that movie, you could definitely line him up a bit. Like, not as far as the TV show.
Yeah, I agree.
Not that side. Not too goofy, but not as serious as like Ben Affleck or Dark Knight. Just somewhere, we need some middle ground Batman.
Yeah, and I definitely think we need to use Batman in some sort of way. I mean, what I was going to say is if I was going to do at least a Phase 2 movie, just for myself, I mean, besides Aquaman, which we probably do, I think that doing a spiritual successor to Teen Titans like Young Justice might work. If you can find a way to bring back some of the Teen Titans and incorporate them into Young Justice, not necessarily Cyborg per se, because I feel like if you did like a Flash sequel, maybe, or even if you did Shazam, you might be able to find a way to fit Cyborg in, because I know that in Shazam, in the Justice League War, I think, animated movie, like Billy Batson, loved, I can't remember what freaking Cyborg's alter ego is, but he like loved the fact that he was a footballer. He was like a fan, and you can almost have those two in a movie. But I'd like to see Young Justice in some sort of respect get its own love. But whether or not we see that is a whole other story.
Yeah, actually, we didn't mention Shazam in either of our lists, and we're both pretty big fans of Shazam, so that's a bit weird, but I guess it's because the movie hasn't come out, so we don't know
it's like, it's one of those situations, it's like, we're going to probably review it anyway, so stay tuned for that, guys, and then we'll let you know if we would change it anyway, but yeah, I think that's probably why we didn't.
You gotta squeeze him in somewhere. I'd probably still bring him in later.
Yeah, I mean, I love Shazam. I love Shazam so much. It's just one of those situations where, because he's not like, for a phase 1, he's not like top tier, in my opinion. And even though I've chucked in the Teen Titans, I feel like Teen Titans is my one B or C list group of characters that I can throw in. Like, if you have that idea of you have to introduce the big guns, but you at least have a little bit of room to throw in something different. I feel like Teen Titans is my one thing that's different, but yeah.
Yeah, you have that one film, like along the lines of Suicide Squad, that's something different. That's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, we should probably wrap it up.
Yeah, I think we've covered everything.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, there you go, guys. That's how we would fix the DCEU anyway. Whether or not those changes get used is probably, pretty far-fetched. But, no, look.
Everyone send this to the DCEU executives.
Yeah, just send them straight to WB, Warner Brothers, they'll get it, and then we'll restart, completely reboot the whole thing. But nah, look, it's been a great talk, and anyways, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, hopefully this is interesting enough we can do more stuff like this.
Yeah, true. Anyway, guys, I guess we'll catch you next week.
See you on the next one.
See ya, guys.